I don't think it is demeaning to us or to Christianity for us to admit that as Christians we are great fans of Jesus. We are great admirers of how He is and what He says and what He does and how He does it. When the rock opera Jesus Christ Superstar opened on Broadway in 1971, most Christians were proud, even though it played fast and loose with the Gospels at times, because it was great to see our guy, Jesus, wowing the audiences. It was great to see those great stories about Jesus being offered to a culture which often forgets Him. 40 years now on stage, Jesus Christ Superstar still receives rave reviews. And for 2,000 years now, the Gospels continue to wow us with the stories of the one who came among us and whose life in our midst changed our lives forever. Today's Gospel reading is one of those great stories. And as we hear it, we are pulling for Jesus, cheering Him on. And once again, His performance is stellar. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all three record this encounter of Jesus with the religious authorities. It takes place during the Holy Week in Jerusalem. They each tell it with different details, but all three have the same decisive quote of Jesus in exactly the same words. Render therefore unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and unto God that which is God's. The situation is this. Jesus had entered Jerusalem on Palm Sunday with great acclaim and support. He had gone to the temple, observed what was going on there, and then quietly retired with His disciples to Bethany, 2 miles outside of Jerusalem. On Monday morning, astounding everyone, breathing fire, He comes to the temple and drives out the money changers, the sacrificial animal merchants, and those involved in any kind of commercial activity. In effect, He purges the temple of all non-worshiping activity. He says that the temple was to be a house of prayer to God, but it has become a den of thieves. He says these things, and all of Jerusalem is shocked by His actions. But no one yet dares to lay a hand on Him. The question in their minds, who is He? Temple leaders and religious authorities are offended, outraged, and from that point on, they are His enemies. Jesus has thrown down the gauntlet, has drawn a line in the sand, and He has done this on purpose. It's on the next day, Holy Tuesday, that the confrontation of today's Gospel takes place. Jesus goes early on Tuesday morning to the temple and spends the entire day teaching in the temple grounds. We can imagine the crowds pouring in to see this prophet from Galilee who had caused such an uproar the day before. The temple was packed, and along with the crowds come Jesus' enemies. Throughout the day, His teaching is interrupted by confrontations with the temple authorities, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the chief priests and the scribes. Luke says there were spies in the crowd whose job was to gather evidence against Jesus. But for his part, Jesus stays in the temple courts where the people are. For the gathered multitudes offer him popular protection against the authorities. They tried to arrest him, we're told, but feared the multitudes. This day, Holy Tuesday, is the last day of Jesus' public ministry. And it's when today's gospel confrontation occurs. Jesus is approached by a group of religious lackeys who address him with flattery. Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and that you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances. Which, by the way, was accurate. The words were true, the men were not. Matthew says Jesus was aware of their malice. Mark says Jesus knew their hypocrisy. Luke says Jesus comprehended their craftiness. Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? It's a carefully crafted question. Jesus responds, "Why put me to the test, you hypocrites?" Well, we know why. To counsel paying the tax would put Jesus out of favor with the people, who are his protection for the moment. Counsel not to pay, and Jesus would be arrested for sedition and in a Roman jail by sundown. Now, he was deeply aware that this was not his time. Tuesday was not his time. His time had not yet come. It was near, but it was not yet. Jesus had thrown down the gauntlet, but it was not the time yet for a showdown. That was to be at Passover, what we call Good Friday. So what to do? How to stay alive? How to make it to Passover? Well, the showdown question had been asked, and it's a very tricky question. For the issue of paying taxes to the Roman occupation was a huge issue for all Jews. Those taxes supported the military government, which had overrun the Jewish nation. Some of those taxes were also surely used to support pagan religions and to build pagan temples. So both Jewish nationalists and Jewish religious leaders were offended. Plus, nobody anywhere wants to pay taxes in the first place. And Jesus, in a brilliant inspiration by the Holy Spirit, says, "Show me the coin for the tax." And they brought him a coin, a denarius. The denarius was a Roman coin minted in Rome for use in the empire. The image on this coin is of Tiberius Caesar, who was emperor at the time of Jesus. The inscription reads, "Caesar Augustus Tiberius, son of the divine Augustus." 1 denarius was the required annual tax for every adult in the Roman Empire. Its worth was a daily wage, what we would call our minimum daily wage. In 2017, that would be $7.25 an hour, $58 a day. In Mexico, the daily wage is $3.54 per day. It better be a very high wall. Jesus takes the coin, looks at it, and says, "Whose likeness and inscription is this?" And they answer, "Caesar's." And then he said to them, "Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." Jeff, come, let's pass this around. No, all you have to do is not keep it. Now, this is very unwise of me to pass this around, because as soon as you get the coin, you're not going to pay any attention to what I'm saying. But try to just lose attention for a little bit. And after you lose the coin, come back and listen. Jesus was in a situation in which he was damned if you do, damned if you don't. His response is just remarkable. It makes us want to cheer. Matthew says that even his opponents marveled. Mark says they were amazed. Luke says they went silent. They were speechless. They could give no response. And so, as Matthew tells us, they went away. They had planned to entangle Jesus in his words, but just the opposite had happened. And now, what is Jesus telling us? He simply says, pay the tax. It's not all that important. Caesar is not all that important. The Roman Empire is not all that important. What is more important for you is that you not neglect your response to God. Jesus is not advocating a separation of church and state. He's not separating out civic duties from religious duties. They will continue to exist, but allegiance to God is what is all important. Jesus tells Pilate on Good Friday that God is allowing Rome power for a time. That you would have no authority over me at all. He says this to his face. You would have no authority over me at all unless it had been given you from above. And if that is true, then God's people must bear with it just as Jesus does. Rome's empire and its taxes will last for a season. God's kingdom will last forever. So what are the things of Caesar and what are the things of God? The things of Caesar are those things which will pass away. Wealth, money, possessions, status. It's a slippery coin, isn't it? Belongings, prestige, even existence itself will pass away. And what are the things of God? Jesus has preached them, taught them, lived them. He learned them as a little boy. He will tell them to us again in next week's Gospel. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like unto it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. These are the things of God. Everything that is worth anything hangs on these things. These are the purposes of human life. They are how we were created to be. what we were designed to have within us. The things of God all have to do with love. And when Jesus' time does come on Good Friday, and when He was lifted up on the cross, it was for the sake of the things of God. Love of His Father and love of all humankind. Tertullian, a great Christian writer of the 2nd century, you all have read him. Tertullian had this to say about today's gospel. About the year 200 AD, he wrote this: "The image of Caesar was on the coin. The image of God is on man. Render to Caesar the money. Render to God yourselves." Now that's pretty simple. Pretty short, a very succinct sermon. I didn't really need to take all this time. But it's such a great story. Way to go, Jesus. You're awesome. We love you. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.